The speech from the throne to open the new session of Parliament came down today, and there was all sorts of interesting stuff around climate and energy and so on. And we're going to talk to Dr. Sara Hastings-Simon about that. So welcome to the interview, Sara.
Thanks for having me.
Now, look, there's a lot of stuff we can talk about, but the thing that stuck out to me was the government's commitment to exceed the 2030 climate targets, because if they do that, then Alberta, which is like 12% of the population and 20-some% of emissions, then I think there's going to be some friction between Edmonton and Ottawa.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, that question of what that friction looks like and what that target is, it brings up the point that actually, we still in Canada don't have a connection or a sort of roll down of that target at a Canadian level to the provinces, right? And so what is, if Canada has a target as a whole, what's the responsibility from different provinces? And kind of, that comes back to this fundamental question in climate policy of, what's the fair way to divide things? Is it equal effort or equal results? And, depending on where you live, both, within a country like Canada, but even within the world, you have a different point of view on that. And there's not even a clear, there's no one right answer to it. I think in the case of Canada, and this is where I think there needs to be a lot more, coming hopefully in coming days about how they're going to get to and exceed that target, which, the policies that exist today, I think are not enough. But setting that aside, I think that there is a pathway for that is is a transition pathway for Alberta, one where, you continue to produce the oil that, from the projects that you have today. So it doesn't have to be, again, I think this brings me back to this question that we always have of sort of, is one side saying shut everything down today and the other side is saying we're going to grow, with no end, when I think the reality is in between. We're going to continue to do what we're doing with existing projects today. We're not going to see a lot of new growth. But within that 2030 time frame, continuing to do what Alberta is doing today, maybe with some reductions to existing oil sands projects, is not totally incompatible with Canada reaching that target. So, people that would jump immediately from that to say, well, this means that, the federal government wants to shut down the oil sands tomorrow, I think that's sort of over-interpreting the target.
Fair enough. Let's talk about British Columbia for a minute, because I thought BC actually would like this speech from the throne. There's lots of stuff in there. Minerals is good for BC. Commitment to retrofit buildings is good for BC. Electric vehicle manufacturing, the Oregon government has an ambition to get into that in a way. So what's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that same set of things that you're saying, is good for Alberta too, right? If the province is ready to embrace those, no question, the minerals piece is, that's a real opportunity for Canada. And so it's exciting to see that starting to get more attention at the federal level, starting to see it get more attention, as you were saying, within the provinces as well, BC, but Alberta also launching this mineral panel today. And that's where, if we think about energy transition writ large in this move from, the oil that's powering the transportation systems to ones that, EVs and some of these other technologies that we're talking about, they're still quite, resource intensive. It's just that the resources are switching from, combustible hydrocarbons that produce carbon emissions to, the metals and minerals that go into these, to this equipment. And so that I think is a real opportunity. That's a real, moving kind of away from just the story of what we have to stop doing and moving more to the story of, what we can be doing. I think that's a really good point. I was just gonna say, you also mentioned the building stuff, which, yeah, I mean, and that's another, climate policy is so wide and broad, and, it includes both this deployment and kind of the building towards the next thing. But the building upgrades and the energy efficiency upgrades is such a good thing to be doing in terms of jobs, in terms of creating spaces that are more comfortable for people to live. So it's one of those policies that people don't get very excited about often because it's not a shiny new widget, I guess. But it's a really critical and good thing to pursue for climate.
What I was going to say was that we often talk about the mitigating risk part of climate policy, and I agree with you. We don't talk enough about the seizing the opportunities that come along with the change, transformation of the global energy system. So, what is the thrown from the speech? Anything that workers should be interested in?
Yeah, so I did note, I mean, it wasn't in the climate section, but there was some conversation about a stronger workforce and this idea of, and I'm sort of quoting, I guess, from the speech directly, but, supporting Canadians as they build new skills in growing sectors or helping workers receive education and accreditation. And whether it was intended in that way or not, to me, I read that as elements of a just transition plan, right? Or of thinking of how do we prepare the workforce that we have today to make that transition into the sectors that are growing. Again, with the recognition, and I think I was hearing someone talk recently about a criticism that, people in the big cities will talk about, oh, well, this oil worker can just go and become a coder tomorrow, and that's kind of ridiculous. And I think that's probably a fair criticism. I think that probably does happen. But I don't think that has to be what is, being recommended here, this idea of new skills, really looking for those skills in adjacent industries, both adjacent in terms of the skill set itself, but even ideally adjacent in terms of sort of the geographical distribution, because that's, solving for that challenging just transition is really a combination of both, right? It's sort of what are the jobs and also where are the jobs.
Gotcha. Sarah, thank you very much for this. Really appreciate it and look forward to our next interview.
Yeah, thanks.